What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you tuning in. We got to talk about the WNBA Finals. Game 3 now in the books, and it was an absolute wild one over there in Phoenix. Wendy Lopez was there covering the game for us and joins us to talk about it today. And Wendy, what was it like in the building last night, and just kind of going into that last moment, a heartbreaker for Mercury fans, but what was it like kind of watching them make that incredible comeback and then just to have kind of their hearts ripped out there right at the buzzer?
Oh my goodness. If a roller coaster were a game, it would be that game. Just the amount of emotions felt in that arena, just seeing Mercury fans, that X factor, go from, thinking it was going to be another game to cutting the deficit, a 17-point deficit in the fourth quarter, being tied. Asia Wilson makes that go ahead shot. I feel like the emotions were just so high, not just with the players, but with the fans alike. So game three was definitely one of those games where you kind of look back at it and you appreciate it. But of course, X Factor and the Mercury are really, really feeling that loss today.
How do you emotionally bounce back from this as a team? I mean, it takes so much to start a comeback like that and to actually climb the mountain and get back to being tied and only to have that kind of that gut punch of a shot to finish it off. As a team, now you're facing an 0-3 hole. How are you able to kind of bounce back from this? What were they saying in the post game that gave anybody kind of an insight as to, they are actually able to kind of settle this and put this behind them and find a way to kind of come back in game 4?
I think Alyssa Thomas said it best after the game. She said, the team needs to come out strong from the very beginning of the game. I mean, you saw in the fourth quarter, their defensive game, they were keeping Vegas to about 4 points midway through that quarter. But of course, you don't win the games in just one quarter, you win them in four. And so she was very adamant about the team needing to come out to play ready as the game begins, not during the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, this game was a little similar to game two, where the team wasn't really, finding its groove on defense or on offense. And so I think you can tell that they're upset with themselves, but of course, only they can control what goes next. So, they haven't been in an 0-3 series just yet. I mean, they were 0-1, won the next few games that they needed to, but this is different. This is basically elimination on Friday. So we're going to see just how, veterans also carry their rookies to help them, even out the emotions. Okay, that game's over and done with. Let's go on to the next. Let's be the best as when the first quarter starts and not try and play catch up. So you could definitely tell Alyssa was a little bit more adamant about it on that front.
That last possession, I thought it was really interesting about how easy of an inbounds and catch in position that Asia was able to get off of a simple down screen. What did you think about kind of the defensive game plan? Obviously, they didn't want to switch off of her, but it did feel like because of that, she was able to get to her spot right away and go to operate. And I mean, I know they sent a double and it was a tough turnaround, and she's one of the best players in the world and proved it again. But I just the defensive mindset and kind of game plan that allowed her to get to her spot to start. I didn't love that. I don't. Do you? I mean, would you have rather switched and maybe had a smaller defender, but then forced her to go further out a little bit right there, or do you think keeping it, keeping the defender on her like that and kind of the matchup that they wanted was the better route to go?
I think just keeping the same matchups that they were going with was the best. I mean, at that moment, you're just kind of going with what you know, right? Kind of with what was working in that moment. So I think it's really tough to imagine anything else, especially in that moment. Um, and especially against Asia. Asia's an MVP caliber player. She's going to be tough to guard no matter who's on her, right? So it was either keeping it the same, trying something new, but at the end of the day, you are facing Asia Wilson. And, she's just clutch. And Becky Hammon, Las Vegas Aces coach, has said that she is one of the most clutch players that they have on that team. So I think they were just, put in between, a place where they just needed to do something and they felt that that was more comfortable for them.
There was a lot of talk about the officiating this one, and felt like foul trouble became a bit of a thing for the Mercury. As you know, Alyssa Thomas ended up with 5 fouls in that game. Monique had 5 fouls, and Bonner had 5 fouls, and it felt like it was they were having a hard time finding the balance of being physical and matching kind of the fact for the finals, and walking that line where it doesn't kind of toe over a little bit. How do you think officiating played a huge role in this, or is it still? I mean, these games are going to be physical. It's the WNBA finals. You're going to have fouls called, but it felt a little bit like they were unsure where the line was at times, and that kind of indecisiveness and decision kind of cost them a little bit.
Yeah, it did, and you could also tell, on that last possession with Asia when you had Alyssa Thomas and Dewana Bonner kinda guarding her, double teaming up on her, and you could tell just Alyssa just did not want to pull that foul because if she did, that game would have been over on those free throws as well. So it really just comes down to the refs, and, unfortunately, that's just how it is. That's how it is in every league, the refs have some type of say in how that game goes. And, when it comes to that, it kinda just does take away from the game because, of course, you don't wanna see Alyssa Thomas just stand around and put her hands up and not try and knock that ball down. She didn't try to knock that ball down. She was just up front, her hands up, trying to at least be able to knock down or block it that way, but wasn't able to try and really defend her the way that we've seen Alyssa defend people. So, unfortunately, the refs do kinda have a say in that game. Um, we'll see how they play out in game 4, but definitely and it was on both sides. Quite a few fouls on the Aces sides. Dana Evans, sorry, actually fouled out in that game, so it's not like it was one way or the other. There were fouls all over the place, but it really does take away from the game and just the ability to do what these players know how to do, or sorry, what to do. So I guess we'll see how that plays out in game 4, but definitely the officiating had some type of say in how this game finished up.
It's not Thomas hasn't been having a bad series by any means. I mean, she was only 1 assist shy of a triple double last night, but in all three of these games, she hasn't gotten over 15 points. She hasn't had kind of the scoring output that we saw in the first 2 rounds. Part of that is the way that the defense is kind of playing her and forcing her to be more of a passer, but does she need to find a way to be more aggressive and score a little bit more for this team to get back to the way that they looked in those first 2 series? Or do you think that it's better for her to continue being taking what the defense is giving her and kinda relying on some of, these other, whether it's Satu, some of these other players to kind of, just they gotta make more shots if this is the way that they're gonna be guarding Alyssa?
I do think Alyssa does need to have a little bit more production, making those points. We've seen her even score up to 30 points in one game, and now she's not even reaching, 15, 20 points, which would have been her average in the regular season. So it's definitely her needing to figure out that defense. Obviously, the Aces are kind of exploiting that, right? Finding how to defend Alyssa, how to keep her from going on a run because we know she can go on runs on her own. So definitely we need more, or sorry, the Phoenix Mercury need more production on that part. Um, but also the bench. Dewana Bonner comes off the bench, 25 points, which is great. But then you have Sammy Whitcomb, who hasn't made any points in these last 2 games. So I guess it's a little bit of both where Alyssa needs to figure out how to, make more contributions on that end, but also she needs help from her other teammates.
They have been at times blitzing a little bit of Asia Wilson, but it feels like there's been a lot of stay at home, and she's a world-class player. I'm just curious if there's different defensive tactics at this point, or having seen her now get it going in a couple straight games. Are they better off, off the screen, sending a double and forcing the ball to rotate to other people? I mean, they got other contributions. Jackie Young had a good game, and like there's some of these other players are showing that you can't leave them open. Um, but it does feel like, especially on that last possession, everybody in the building knew where the ball was going, and it was still one-on-one catch and then kind of a half double at times. I just I'm keep I'm at the point where right now, if I'm going down, I'm gonna force some of the other players to completely beat me rather than watching her, put up another 30-point game and kinda bury this series.
I mean, I think at this point, just because of who Asia is and the type of player she is, she's gonna be tough to defend no matter what. I mean, she's gonna get at least 20 points per game because that's just the player she is. She adapts, she adjusts. But I think what the Mercury really need to focus on is not just Asia Wilson, but like you said, these other players that are having great games. I mean, Dana Evans took game one. She was on a run. Jackie Young, game two. Jewel Lloyd hit, 4 3-pointers in that first quarter that actually really helped the Aces, extend that lead. That was their run. And so I think it's not just, oh, we need to focus on just Asia. Well, what about everybody else? We all know that they have the experience. They've been here before, and so, Phoenix really needs to figure out a way to just contain that offense overall because if they're guarding Asia and they're keeping her at bay, they have other players that they can rely on. And it's not just the starters. Again, their bench has been phenomenal. So I guess it's a mix of knowing how to keep Asia to not get 30 points, but also not let that bench, you know, just go on a run like we saw in game 3 or like we saw in game 2. That's gonna be very tough for them. So, not sure what, Coach Tibbetts is gonna be doing here in game 4, but I guess we'll see how that plays out.
Game 1, I mean, there's a lot of plays that it comes down to, but free throws end up haunting them there at the very end. They end up leaving 8 points at the free throw line. I mean, 75% basically at the free throw line isn't horrible, but when the Aces shoot 92% of the free throw line and only miss 2 and you end up giving up 6 points in a game that you lost by 2, like, that's that I'm the free throws feel like it's such a minor thing normally in some series, but you win in the margins, and it feels like the free throw shooting is really starting to kind of haunt them in this series now in 2 of these 3 games.
Of course, and I did, talk to Nate Tibbetts about it, and I mean, it's not like the Aces are given more opportunities, there are fouls going on both sides, but at the end of the day, like you said, this game is won in margins, and the Aces are just taking, care of business on that end. They know that they need to get those free throws in, and it seems like the Mercury are just not able to get those shots in, and this was a two-point game. I mean, game 1, game 3, 1 possession game, 3 points, 2 points. If a few of those free throws would have landed, this would have been a little bit of a different game. So definitely free throws are something that the Mercury are going to need to kind of work on, fix, because it could either extend their season or Aces walk away with their third championship.
What was the reaction? How would you describe it of the fans kind of at that moment when that shot went in and kind of as you were in the building kind of taking it all in? What did you notice?
Everyone was kind of deflated. I think everybody was waiting to roar, looking for Asia's shot to miss. They were kind of holding their breaths and there was just silence. It's just the music going on. And once that shot went in, you could just hear everyone's just kind of gasp. And so you could feel the deflation in the building once she got that in. Um, so, I mean, when a game is that close and y- the Mercury have the opportunity to steal the win and they're not able to pull it off, you could just tell that the home crowd was just, deflated.
What do the Mercury have to do to find a way to kind of get this series back over to Vegas? How do you flush this one? How do you kind of put it behind you? And then how do you find a way to beat a team that's now won the first 3 games? What has to change here in game 4?
Defense. Defense. That is the key for this team. They have not been playing their best defense at the beginning of the games. In each of these games, I think besides the first half of game 1, their defense has definitely been, hindering them. Um, Aces go on a roll, and it's just playing catch up at that point, and that's not something you want to do against a team like the Aces, where it's very hard to defend. So, defense is the only thing that's really going to keep them in this game. Um, and I guess a little bit of that bench as well. Like I said, Sammy Whitcomb hasn't really been as productive in this series as she was in round two against Minnesota. So if they can just get a little bit more production from their bench and just play defense emotionally, I mean, there's veterans on that team, and people have actually won championships. So I'm sure their veteran presence and whatever they say will, reflect on the rest of the team who haven't been in this position before. But their defensive identity is the only thing that's going to be able to keep this a series.
Feels tough. To me, it feels like the series is really over. Like you spend that much emotion, that much to get yourself back into it, and Asia Wilson lands a haymaker that kinda it feels like that was a knockout punch right there. It's going to be very hard to win 4 straight games, let alone this next one kinda bouncing back, especially with 2 of those games would have to be on the road, so,
Right.
I mean, they're in obviously a tremendous amount of trouble. You gotta get one and then see what happens is I think that's gotta be the mindset. You take it one game at a time, you say, let's find a way to win this one and push it back over to Vegas and then see what happens after that. But it does feel like that shot right there. Like I have a hard time imagining any team looking at the series now being down 3-0 and having that moment and feeling like you gave it your best punch and it just a great player made a great play and it's all for naught. And now you're kind of in a top, a tight spot. It feels like this series is over. We'll see. I mean, they have a chance to bounce back, but that does feel like a series clinching shot in a lot of ways to me. So we'll see how this team responds. It's not great right now for them, but it's not over just yet. Like we said, it's a best of 7 this year, so we'll see if they can find a way. But that was an incredible shot and on the highest stage, and you got to give Asia Wilson her props because that was an incredible play by one of the best to ever do it. So
Of
we'll
course.
see if they close it out. We'll see if the Mercury can kind of extend this series, but it is full on trouble time right now for Phoenix. So we'll see what happens here in Game 4. Wendy, I really appreciate your time and your insight.
All right. Thank you so much, Spencer. Appreciate it.